Three 8-year-old triplet girls accidentally meet a strange man at their mother's grave, unaware that he is their biological father. He once walked away from love, never knowing he had children, until a secret is revealed, the past resurfaces, and a journey of healing begins. The November wind blew gently through the leafless trees of Green Hill Cemetery, stirring the ground as if whispering the sound of time slipping away. Amid that stillness, William Carter stood motionless before a freshly laid grave, his salt and pepper hair swaying faintly in the breeze, his black coat insufficient to shield the hollow spaces within his heart. Her name was etched in gilded letters: Grace Wilson, mother, daughter, friend, lover. Each word was a mark, a faded chapter in the memoir he had once tried to forget. Yet standing here, surrounded by mourners he cared little for, William realized nothing in his life had ever shaken him like this moment. Not the billion-dollar deals, not the rumors swirling through Wall Street, but a single grave. He had loved her with a love that came in the wrong time. They met when they were too young, too certain of the future, too hasty to hold on to what truly mattered. A parting without promise of reunion followed, and then each walked away down paths that diverged in defiance of fate. William chose ambition, Grace chose silence, and carried 3 small lives within her, without a word of reproach. Only when every door had closed did he learn he'd once had the chance to be a father. 3 girls, 8 years old, 3 stars so strikingly alike, stood huddled behind the great oak at the cemetery's edge, silently watching him as though reflecting something familiar. William didn't know their names, didn't know why his heart trembled when their eyes met his, but he knew one thing for certain: that gaze had begun to rewrite the entire remainder of his life. Every ending nervously as they twisted the now cold paper coffee cup. Sunlight slanted through the gaps in the leaves, scattering glints across the dark jacket, a kind he didn't usually wear. Today, he wanted to seem less like a CEO, less, too much. He glanced at his watch. It was almost time. Charlotte, Grace's sister, had said she'd bring the 3 girls. He still wasn't used to calling them his daughters. The word caught in his throat, not because he didn't want to believe it, but because it was too big, bigger than anything he'd ever possessed. Wealth, fame, power. The sound of small footsteps approached. William looked up. 3 girls drew near, each in a differently colored coat, red, blue, purple. They were so alike it was almost unbelievable. The same reddish-brown hair tied neatly back, the same bright eyes and a wariness in their gazes that made his heart tighten faintly. "I'm Harper," the girl in the red coat said, her voice clear and slightly stiff. "This is Haley and Hannah." "I'm William," he replied, a touch awkwardly. "I knew your mom a long time ago." They nodded. No one said anything more. He shifted slightly, patting the bench beside him. "Would you like to sit for a bit? I brought cookies." Haley was the first to sit down, then Hannah followed. Harper lingered for a few seconds, her eyes seeming to weigh something, before she too sat gently on the edge of the bench. William held out the bag of cookies. "Your mom used to like these." He wasn't sure why he remembered that, but Hannah's eyes brightened just a little. "I like them too," she whispered. He nodded faintly, his heart beating unevenly. How long had it been since he'd sat near children? How long since he'd had to soften his voice to notice who was sad or happy? Charlotte stood a short distance away, pretending to be absorbed in the trees, leaving the 4 of them their own space. "I like to draw," Hannah said suddenly, pulling a small notebook from her bag. "I draw Mom a lot." William took the notebook when she offered it, a pencil sketch. Long hair, a gentle smile, a face he had once loved and still remembered clearly. "You draw beautifully," he said softly, a feeling rising in his chest that was hard to name, a tenderness, slow and slightly awkward, but real. "Can I see you all again?" he asked, his voice lowering as if afraid to shatter something fragile. The 3 exchanged glances. Harper was the one to answer, firm but not cold. We'll think about it. And William nodded like a man learning to wait, not just for an answer, but for the chance to draw closer to what he'd once let slip away. "Would you like to get ice cream with us?" Hannah asked, her round eyes sparkling like two gummy candies. William hesitated for a beat. He'd never turned down ice cream, especially not when invited by an 8-year-old who seemed to be summoning all her courage to speak up. "Of course I would," he said with a smile, "but I have to confess I'm a bit of a coward when it comes to mint." "Then don't pick mint," Haley replied, as if it were the most obvious thing in the world. The little ice cream shop sat on a street corner, with a hand-painted sign and wooden chairs in pastel colors. William dipped his head in greeting to the elderly shopkeeper, then stood watching as the three girls pressed their faces against the cold glass case, engrossed as if choosing treasure. "I want chocolate peanut butter marshmallow," Harper declared, loud and confident. "I want strawberry gooey," Hannah said, making William frown. He'd never heard of that flavor. "There's no gooey," Haley corrected. "She means strawberry soft serve." William ordered 3 scoops exactly as requested, and after a moment's hesitation chose vanilla for himself. Safe, neutral, like he was trying to be right now. They sat on a stone bench outside to eat. The plastic spoons clinked and scraped, punctuated by bursts of giggles when Hannah let her ice cream drip onto her hand, or when William got some on his nose trying to mimic their perfect lick-around technique. "You eat ice cream like someone's never done it before?" Harper remarked, half teasing, half serious. "Well," William scratched his head, "you're kind of right. It's been a long time since I last went out for ice cream. It feels weird alone, and everyone who invites me always wants sushi instead." That made all 3 girls laugh. Even Harper, who usually kept her distance, cracked a smile. "You should eat ice cream more often," Hannah said. "It makes people happy." William nodded, gazing at the 3 little faces glowing in the golden afternoon light. It was a simple moment. No heartfelt speeches, no grand promises, just 4 people, 1 old and 3 young, sharing the sweetness of a peaceful afternoon. And when Hannah handed him a napkin, saying, "You've still got ice cream on your nose," he burst out laughing. Yeah, ice cream really did make people happy. And sometimes it helped them start over, in the sweetest way possible. William sat quietly in the car, his hand gently clutching the small velvet box in his coat pocket. For days he had pondered, refining every etched detail, choosing every element, not to impress, but to be worthy. Worthy of the 3 girls who had entered his life so softly yet indelibly. The wooden table in the familiar cafe was reserved, as it was every weekend. Harper was buried in a book. Haley scribbled something in her little notebook, and Hannah sat drawing, humming faintly under her breath. William placed a tiny silver box in front of each girl, the metal glinting in the afternoon light. "Is it a special occasion?" Haley looked up, her eyes narrowing slightly with caution. "Not exactly. I just thought it was time to give you something small." The 3 girls looked at him, then at each other, as if weighing the moment. Then, one by one, they opened their boxes. Inside were 3 pendants, identical in shape yet subtly distinct. Harper's had a bold, decisive etched border. Inside the words, "Your mother's strength lives in you." And Hannah's curved softly, like a petal, inscribed, "Your mother's heart beats in you." All 3 girls froze. For a few seconds, no one spoke. William sat still, not pressing them. He simply watched each child, 3 vivid reflections carrying the breath of a woman he had once loved and lost. Hannah was the first to break the silence, her voice light as a breeze. "How did you know Mom used to call us that?" William exhaled softly, pausing for a beat. "I didn't. I just felt it was right, like your mother whispered it to me in a dream." Haley stared at her pendant, lips pressed together. Harper said nothing, only quietly slipped the chain around her neck. In the small cafe, the 3 necklaces shimmered like light in a frame of memory. Nothing flashy, nothing extravagant, just a recognition. A connection, fragile but real. For the first time, William didn't feel like a stranger sitting among these 3 girls. And when Hannah gave a faint smile, whispering, "Thank you for remembering Mom," he knew the gift wasn't just for them. It was also a gentle apology to the past, and a bridge, small but sturdy, reaching toward the future. The small kitchen in the Brooklyn apartment was filled with the rich aroma of lasagna fresh from the oven. Hannah was folding napkins into star shapes. Harper was checking the oven temperature with a serious gaze, and Haley was meticulously counting the plates and bowls on the dining table, as if missing even one was unthinkable. William stood at the kitchen door, still wearing the apron Charlotte had insisted he put on to fit the scene. He smiled, a smile both warm and wistful, as if old memories were slipping into the present. Dinner passed with lively chatter. Each girl shared a little story from their week. Harper had aced her literature class. Haley had accidentally popped a balloon during a science experiment, and Hannah had earned praise from her teacher for a drawing of their mom. After dinner, as if it were a ritual, Hannah tugged at William's hand. "Want to see our room? We cleaned it up today." The room the three girls shared was surprisingly tidy, each corner bearing its own unique mark. Harper had a bookshelf aligned like a miniature library. Haley displayed models of stars and gemstones, and Hannah's space was adorned with drawings and sticky notes scattered around her mirror. Then, suddenly, Hannah pulled an old wooden box from a drawer. "This was Mom's," she said softly, her eyes glistening faintly. Inside were fragments of memory, dried flowers pressed in paper, movie stubs, an old fountain pen, and then a photograph. William froze. It was him, 20 years younger, standing beside Meredith, his arm draped lightly over her shoulder, both of them laughing, a natural, unguarded laugh, as if the world held only the two of them. "It's you," Harper said, her voice quiet but certain. "You're the one in the picture with Mom." William nodded, not hiding, not turning away. "Yes, it's me, and your mom. Back then we were so young. She'd just gotten her research scholarship." He sat down, his eyes fixed on the photo. "At the time I thought I had to choose my own path, career, success, but looking back, I'm not sure I chose right." Haley spoke softly. "Mom never said much about you, just that some people, even if they're not around, stay in your heart forever." William smiled, a smile softened by the dampness of memory. "And I, even though I'm late, hope I still have a chance to be with you, if you'll let me." The three girls didn't respond. They just looked at him quietly. Then Harper carefully placed the photo back in the box, closing the past with a rare tenderness. That night, as William left the apartment, the winter wind brushed coldly against his collar, but he didn't pull his coat tighter, because in his chest a memory had come alive, a memory shaped like Meredith and the three daughters he'd never dreamed he'd meet. "You actually know how to ice skate?" Harper eyed William with her signature skeptical look. "Not just know," William replied, half joking, half serious. "I once won the award for falling the most in my first lesson." The three girls burst into laughter. Hannah clapped her hands, her eyes sparkling. "I've never been, but I want to try." "Me too," Haley chimed in, her voice laced with curiosity and calculation. "I want to figure out the mechanics of balance on a low-friction surface." Harper still wasn't fully convinced. "But what if it hurts when we fall?" William crouched down, his tone earnest. "Harper, sometimes life's like ice skating. You have to learn how to fall well before you figure out how to stand up right." The outdoor rink at Central Park buzzed with Christmas music and dazzling lights. William had reserved a small corner beforehand away from the crowd so the girls could learn without pressure. Once 3 colorful knit hats and 3 tiny pairs of gloves were snugly in place, William laced up his own skates, trying not to let anyone see him wobble. "First things first," he instructed, his voice steady like an amateur coach. "We learn how to fall. Whoever falls the best gets a prize." Hannah volunteered first. She glided 3 steps before dropping to her knees with a gentle tumble, giggling brightly. 9 points for style, William cheered, clapping. Haley went next. She fell backward like a scientist testing gravity. 9.5. Bonus for a very authentic oops sound. Finally, Harper stepped onto the ice, muttering under her breath, "I can do this, it's no big deal." Suddenly, she slipped and fell flat on her stomach. William rushed over, but Harper was already sitting up, puffing out a breath. "I'm fine. It didn't hurt much." "Full 10 points, William said, offering his hand, "because you got up on your own without any help." After an hour of fumbling, the girls could move around the rink on their own. Each had her own style. Hannah glided while waving her arms like a swan. Haley mumbled physics formulas, and Harper focused silently as if leading an Olympic team. William skated circles around them, cheering and guiding each one, a feeling swelling in his chest, both unfamiliar and comforting, as if he wasn't just teaching them to skate, but learning to become part of their world. As dusk settled in, Charlotte arrived to pick them up. The group gathered around a hot cocoa stand. Hannah leaned her head on William's shoulder, whispering, "Today was my happiest day this winter." "Me too," Haley nodded. Harper didn't say anything, but she rested lightly against his arm, a silent thank you that needed no words. William smiled, gripping his cocoa cup tightly. The ice had melted beneath their feet, but something inside him was taking shape. Not cold, but warm, with a name. Connection. Late in the afternoon, the small cafe on Street 81 was quieter than usual. By the glass window, William sat waiting for the 3 little girls. In front of him was an untouched cup of Earl Grey tea and a neatly folded piece of paper, the first handwritten letter Harper had ever sent him, containing just 3 brief lines that he'd kept ever since. "I don't know why you care about us, but thank you, Harper." When the cafe doors swung open, William looked up. The 3 girls walked in, each wearing a different colored jacket as always, but today something felt off. Not their expressions, but their eyes. All 3 carried a quiet, pensive look, like children hiding a secret they'd just uncovered. "Hi, Uncle." Hannah spoke first, still the warmest of the trio. "Hi, kids," William smiled. "I heard you have a special assignment today." Haley nodded, pulling a stack of papers from her backpack. "It's a family assignment. The teacher asked us to make a poster about heritage and traditions. Everyone has to talk about their grandparents, parents, hometown, and the unique things about their family." William gave a small nod. "So, how can I help?" Harper sat up straight. "We don't know anything about our dad." The air paused for a beat. The statement wasn't charged with heavy emotion, but it landed in William's chest like a tiny needle, just sharp enough to make him falter. "We looked through Mom's stuff," Haley continued. "There were some letters, a few old photos, but no names, no addresses, no explanations." William went still. This time, he didn't have an immediate answer. Not because he didn't know, but because he wasn't ready to be known. Hannah looked at him, her deep brown eyes seeming to glimpse something. "Do you know, Uncle?" A fragile silence slipped between them. William rested his hands on the table, hesitating. "Your mom. She was a very private person. Maybe she had her reasons for keeping some things to herself." "I know," Harper said, her voice softening for the first time. "But sometimes not knowing is what bothers us the most." William lowered his head. He hadn't meant to deceive them, but he also didn't yet have the courage to reveal the truth. "Maybe, if you'd like," he said, his voice as light as a breeze, "I could help you look into it, about your mom's family, the things she cherished, the places she'd been. Maybe through that we can piece together something about your dad." Haley gave a slight nod, Hannah offered a faint smile, and Harper, as usual, said nothing, just quietly jotted something in the corner of her small notebook. That afternoon, William knew a door was opening. Not the door to the truth, but the door to a choice. When should he step through, and was he ready to face 3 pairs of eyes waiting for answers? William's new apartment sat on a quiet street in the Upper West Side, its wide windows framing a view of the park rustling with green and wind. That afternoon, sunlight spilled through the glass, gently bathing the oak table where he laid out his design. 3 small rooms, neatly aligned along a long hallway. Each was hand-drawn, fine pencil lines, meticulous, as if he were sketching a dream he'd never dared to name. The doorbell chimed. The 3 girls stepped inside with Charlotte. Hannah rushed forward first, wrapping her arms around him. "You promised to show us our rooms," she chirped, her voice bubbling with excitement. William smiled, nodding gently. "Today, you get to be the architects." Harper and Haley approached the table. Both studied the blueprint, each reacting in her own way. Harper was quiet, her fingers tracing the squares. Haley tilted her head, murmuring as she measured the space with her eyes. "This room gets the most light," Haley said. "It'd be perfect for a telescope. This one has a quiet corner. If there's a big bookshelf, I could read all day," Harper added. "And I," Hannah chimed in, "want a big mirror and a bar for ballet practice." William listened to every word, nodding without missing a detail. "Good. Each room will be its own world, made just for you." Together they picked out paint colors, soft blue for Haley, lavender for Hannah, warm cream for Harper. William grew still as he watched the girls debate playfully, lost in colors and ideas, as if knew from this moment the music of his life had turned to a new chapter, no longer a solo but a quartet, with 3 young voices resonating through every corner of the house. Late on a Tuesday afternoon, the small Brooklyn apartment felt quieter than usual. William sat on the sofa, his hand resting lightly on a canvas bag filled with picture books and a few printouts about Scottish traditions, things he hoped might aid the girls with their family heritage assignment. Charlotte poured tea, her gaze discreetly observant. "The kids have something they'd like to say to you today," she said softly, then left him alone in the living room. The 3 girls entered, Harper leading the way, clutching a carefully folded piece of paper, her face serious as if preparing for an important meeting. Haley followed with a pen in hand, while Hannah offered a faint smile, a touch nervous but still gentle as always. "We have a set of rules," Harper began, her eyes locking onto his. "For someone who wants to be our friend for the long term." William set his teacup down, nodding with respect. "I'd love to hear them." Harper unfolded the paper, reading each rule in a solemn tone. "Rule 1, be a friend, not a replacement for Mom." William nodded slightly, his voice low but warm. "I'd never try to do that. Your mom, she's one of a kind." "Rule 2, keep your promises. Don't be late, don't forget plans." "I understand, and I'll do my best to always be on time like Harper prefers." Rule 3, no expensive gifts. We don't want to be bribed. William let out a soft chuckle, unable to hide his delighted surprise. "What about roses, then?" "That's fine," Hannah whispered, "because Mom liked them." Haley jumped in. "Rule 4, be honest, even when it's hard." William paused for a second, then gave a deep nod. "I agree. You deserve the truth." Harper reached the final rule, her voice dipping slightly. Rule 5. If we don't want to see you anymore, you have to respect that. The words cut into William's chest like a slow knife, not harsh but deep. He looked at the 3 small faces before him, all equally serious, devoid of childishness. "I promise," he said, his voice growing hoarse. "I don't have the right to force myself into your lives. I can only ask to stay if you'll let me." Silence settled for a moment. Then Hannah stepped forward, pulling a heart-shaped sticker from her pocket and pressing it gently onto the rule sheet. "And Rule 6, she smiled faintly. "Sometimes we're allowed to change our minds." The 3 of them burst into soft laughter, and William joined in, quietly, but with a warmth that reached deep inside. The paper was folded again, carefully placed on the table like a sacred contract. There was no mention of father, no grand revelation that day, but for William this was a turning point, from trusted adult to chosen one. A small place, but a steady one, built on trust, not blood. One early winter morning, the sky hung soft and gray. like a woolen scarf draped lightly over the city. Greenwood Park lay unusually still. 4 figures stood together, 3 little girls and 1 man. Before them, Meredith's grave rested quietly, adorned with white roses. Harper placed a flower down first. "Mom liked white," she said, her voice small but clear. "A symbol of new beginnings," Haley added. Hannah whispered, "And of longing, too." William said nothing. He simply stood there silent, as he had been for the past year, a year since he'd first glimpsed 3 eerily similar girls at Eleanor's funeral. A year since the moment he realized he was their father. A year of learning not just to be a father, but a friend, a companion, with a caution and patience his younger self had never known. "You know," Harper turned to him, speaking slowly, "you're our dad." William faltered slightly. Haley picked up where she left off, her gaze steady on him. "I found Mom's letter in the wooden box," Hannah added gently. "She wrote that if we wanted to find our dad, we could. She didn't forbid it." There was no anger, no tears, just stillness, like the moment a lake's ripples finally fade. William knelt down, his eyes level with the 3 children. I'm sorry I wasn't there. I didn't know, but now I do, and I don't want to miss another day." He took a long breath, his gaze unwavering. "If you'll let me, I'd like to be a father. Not to replace your mom, but to carry on her love in the way I can." No one answered right away, but then Hannah, always the first to reach for emotion, stepped forward and hugged him softly. Haley followed, nodding silently, no words needed. Harper hesitated, but the guardedness in her eyes had softened. "Okay," she said, "but you have to memorize the rules again from the start." All 4 of them laughed, quietly, like a breeze brushing over a heart coming back to life. That afternoon they returned to the new apartment. The 3 small rooms already bore the marks of their owners, books scattered messily, a ballet skirt draped over a chair, a glowing moon model shimmering by the window. At the end of the hallway was Meredith's room, the memory room. On the wall hung a large photo, her embracing her 3 daughters, her face radiant on a sunlit day. William stood there for a long time, saying nothing, but in his eyes for the first time there was no regret. Only gratitude. Gratitude for being reunited. Gratitude for the chance to love. With gratitude for finally learning. Being a father isn't a title, but a choice, renewed each day with presence and tenderness. And that was how the wounds began to heal. Not rushed, not loud, but real and whole. A story that leaves us speechless about late-blooming love, forgiveness, and bonds once thought lost forever. Thank you for joining Millionaire Heart Stories. See you on the next journey, where emotions always lead the way.